Meanwhile, President Trump telling House Republicans he is 1,000% behind their rival immigration bills, heading for votes as early as tomorrow. Joining me right now is Republican Congressman Ted Poe of Texas, who was at the meeting with the president just last night. Good to have you here, Congressman.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to really simplify this in layman's terms, if you would, because these people, and you live in Texas, so you've seen it there on the border, they're coming up from the likes of Honduras or Guatemala, Mexico. They're crossing into our country, and then at what point are they being detained? I mean, how are they getting in over the border in the first place?
Well, they're getting across the border in two ways. One, some are coming through the legal ports of entry, but most of them are just finding ways to cross the border because the border in Texas, contrary to what a lot of people think, is porous.
Okay, so somebody's getting them again, and just humor me if you would. So somebody's getting them once they come to the U.S., correct? There's some kind of operation there that's catching them once they're over the border.
That's correct. The Border Patrol is capturing as many as they can after they've crossed into the United States. And once they are captured, now, if there are children with them, the children are separated from the parents. Under the president's executive order and in the legislation, that will not be permitted.
Okay,
children
but
will stay
again,
with
to
their
back
parents.
up, so they come over. We say, hey, you're not supposed to be here. You don't have the proper identification, et cetera. Why can't we just send them back?
Well, some of them are immediately sent back at the discretion of the Border Patrol. If they determine that it's an illegal entry, it's a misdemeanor, they have the discretion to send them back immediately. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they file charges on them for violating the law, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. And then when that happens, the person is actually detained, they're put in custody, and there lies the issue with the children, what to do with them.
Because it's being treated as a criminal offense. Previously,
right.
it was just considered civil, but they're saying, no, you're here illegally. You have committed a criminal act by illegally crossing the border. So now, if you're a criminal, that unfortunately, you most likely in the U.S. would be separated from your child if you went to jail. But we're going to try and now correct that. Is that what I understand? That the president is signing an executive order that would enable these families to be detained in one entity so that everyone can be together?
That is correct. Homeland Security will now have the responsibility of keeping the children together. Now, remember, they are just accused of coming in illegally. There hadn't been an adjudication whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. And when we get to that point, that's a different issue. But when people come into the United States and they're confronted by the Border Patrol and they're taken into custody, if they have children, then those children stay with the parents for at least 20 days until the adjudication of that offense takes place.
Again, why aren't we just sending them back?
Well, some of them go immediately back. Some of them voluntarily decide, yes, you caught me, I will go back to where I came from. And then they are deported or voluntarily there at the border. But that's not always the case. Some are captured, they don't say anything, they have kids with them, and so then the Border Patrol then takes them into and detains those individuals along with the children, or the children stay with the parents, and that's the key. Before, the children were immediately separated from the parents, or the so-called parents, and then they were dealt with at a later basis, but they separate them. No more separation, be kept together. And the key, I think, is we need more immigration judges to make the final determination whether they have violated the law, whether they get to stay, or whether they go back. And that is really the bottleneck.
And that's the asylum seekers? I mean, in other words, if you're here because you're seeking asylum, you're perhaps not seen as violating the law, and you wouldn't be seen in the eyes of the courts as violating the law because you're seeking asylum and we're giving it to you.
Well, that's a different set of people. They come in, they seek asylum, immediately seek asylum. Once again, the children are not separated from the parents now, under the executive order, I assume. They'll be staying with the parents. And then they have a hearing before an immigration judge to determine if they are a bona fide asylum seeker or not. But the problem with that is it takes so long. So that is the reason that we have this influx of people at the border is because they're waiting for the asylum seekers are waiting for an immigration judge to say, yes, you can stay. No, you cannot stay. And they're waiting for an immigration judge to say criminal charges are filed against you and you have to go through the criminal justice system. All because we don't have enough immigration judges at the border to make
Okay,
those
so we need more
determinations.
judges, and it seems to me the logical thing is have a stronger border and stronger border patrol so that you don't have all these people coming in and sitting on the border waiting for a judge to look at their case. But, you know, that said, Congressman, did the president step in something here with this whole ordeal? Because you see how the media has played this out. You see the anger by so many directed at this administration because they don't like the idea, you know, understandably. I mean, the little kids, their parents, if they're pulled apart, that turns into a kind of an emotional mess for the country. Do you think that the administration didn't entirely anticipate the backlash that they'd see on this one?
I'm not sure what the president anticipated or did not anticipate, but the president is fixing the issue
Karl
now.
Rove is blaming Stephen Miller, by the way. He said this is sort of a Stephen Miller special, and that he made the mistake of not calculating what this response to taking children away from their families would be.
Well, we've seen that, and that's why the president is going to fix it. But Congress has the responsibility to fix this permanently, and we'll have a day of reckoning to see whether or not both sides want to stop this issue of kids being separated at the border, because we're going to vote legislatively on that. We'll see who supports that and who doesn't support that.
Wow, this is it's a story that just has taken over the American consciousness right now, and as you said, perhaps they didn't quite think this one through in terms of the backlash. But nonetheless, something has to be done. And, you know, this president is committed, he says, to immigration reform. He's even put something on the table that would have given 2 million DACA folks the opportunity at citizenship here in the U.S. Congressman, is the left ever going to come around to his side of things and have some kind of compromise?
Compromise is the only answer, and I think that we will eventually reach a compromise. We have to compromise on the issue of immigration, and then we have to deal with border security. We're dealing with both of those in the same piece of legislation. On the DACA recipients, they will, if legislation passed, they probably have at least a 12-year stay in the United States to apply for citizenship, and that will take visas away from the lottery system and give those to the so-called dreamers. So I think there's a way that we can have a compromise. But right now we're dealing with the immediate issue, and I commend the president of solving this problem at the border of separating families. And he's going to do it, and Congress has the obligation to do it long term.
Congressman Poe, thank you very much. Good to see you here today.
Thank you.